Welcome to a special offering by Conversations with a Wounded Healer, the Burnt Out Practice Owner. This series will discuss the current state of group practice ownership, the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll hear current and former practice owners' tales of glory and woe as we attempt to answer the ultimate question, why do we do this to ourselves? And we want to hear from you too. What have been your biggest moments of struggle or triumph? What are questions you want us to explore? I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I owned and operated my practice, Head Heart Therapy, for 10 years before selling in 2023. Ownership was an equally grueling and rewarding experience for me, and I now spend my time helping current practice owners find balance for themselves. Join us between releases of Conversations with a Wounded Healer for this special series. Hello, and welcome to the Burnt Out Practice Owner. So happy you're here today. Hope there is sunshine wherever you are, or actually, if it's night, I hope there's not sunshine, because then that would mean there's a serious apocalypse happening. So I hope you had sunshine in your day today. Let's be more clear about that. Hello and welcome. I am excited for today's guests, and I said guests. We have two guests on today, but let me tell you a couple things before we get started. First things first. I wanted to let you know, give you a little heads up and warning. This special series called The Burnt Out Practice Owner is coming to an end. Dun, dun, dun. Actually, there's no need for scary, sad music. This is actually a good thing. I got some shit up my sleeve, y'all, and I'm going to be really excited to roll it out. It's not quite time to do that yet. I wanted to let you know that if you want to listen to this episode, it's not going to be here forever. You will be able to find it somewhere forever, but we'll save the details for the next episode. So, but just so you know, like we're doing termination sessions, we like to prepare a client a long time in advance. We don't just take ourselves out from under them right away. We give people warning. So this is the warning that the series is coming to an end. All right. In the meantime, if you want to connect with me, I do still want to hear from you. Even though we might not be doing this exact series, we are going to be doing something really cool. And I still want to hear from you. What is important that you want me to talk about with guests and all the juicy stuff? Give me the tea. And you can reach out on Instagram at headheartbiztherapy or by email at sarah@headheartbiztherapy.com. Of course, we always appreciate a rate and review on Apple Podcast, or you can go online to ratethispodcast.com/woundedhealer. It really actually does help. It helps tell people that we're a legit podcast. You can share this with a friend while supplies last, I suppose. And lastly, if you're a group practice owner, you can hire me. I work with a variety of group practices in different business stages, and whether you're struggling or thriving, I want to help you feel most confident and competent and balanced in your work. So if that's what you want and want to lead with your heart, I'm your gal. So without further ado, let me tell you about today's guests. So I've known Gabi Granoff for several years now. She used to work for my friend Bianca, who you heard Bianca's episode and her hilarious story about having to clean up shit in front of her practice. So Gabi used to work for Bianca, and then Gabi opened a practice with her husband. And so she's been co-running that practice for, I don't even know how many years now. You'd have to ask Gabi. And we got to talking at a networking event, and we were just chatting about all the shit that's happening, going down in the Chicagoland area. And she was telling me about her relationship with one of her staff members. And I was like, this sounds like a really beautiful, reciprocal relationship that is so needed. And people need to, first of all, people need to hear that relationships like this are possible. And second of all, people just need to hear the conversations that they have together. So that's what led to this episode. So let me introduce you to our guests, Gabi and Evelyn. Gabi Granoff, her is a licensed clinical psychologist and the co-owner of Solway Psychology Group, a group practice in Chicago. At Solway, Gabi serves as the clinical director and feels honored to support other therapists to connect to their most authentic selves. Her own clinical work is focused on complex trauma with psychodynamic, relational, feminist, and multicultural somatic lenses. And then Evelyn Williams, she, her, completed her Master of Social Work degree at the University of Illinois at Champaign-Urbana and has over 25 years of clinical experience across various settings, including large nonprofits, outpatient clinics, crisis intervention, schools, and now private practice. She's provided both clinical and administrative supervision to social work interns and professionals. So please enjoy this wonderful conversation with Gabi and Evelyn. When you think about the disenfranchised, marginalized, or often harmed populations in the context of therapy, who do you think of? For whom do you create specialized spaces? One of the identities often missed from therapists' radar are sex workers. Sex workers are disproportionately excluded or harmed in the context of policing, social services, healthcare, emergency services, and mental health support. What would it mean to be a sex work affirming provider? Equitable Care Certification is a nonprofit sex worker-led organization trying to create better mental health care for the sex work community. The Equitable Care Certification training seeks to close this education gap for therapists and other healing providers. Check out their 36-hour certification course and show up for sex workers in your community this year. To find out more, visit equitablecarecertification.com. Hello, Evelyn and Gabi. Welcome to the Burnt Out Practice Owner.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you two. So before we get into the meat of things, you want to introduce one another? Maybe Evelyn, you want to go first?
Of course. Thank you. My name is Evelyn Williams. I am a social worker here at Solway Psychology. I am also a consultant for different private practices that are looking to better support the staff that they have that are people of color.
Awesome.
And I am Gabi Granoff. I am a licensed clinical psychologist. I am the co-owner and clinical director here at Solway Psychology. And I would say that I really specialize in areas of trauma, of complex trauma. I work from a psychodynamic perspective, from a body-oriented perspective, feminist and systems perspective. And yeah, that's me, I think.
Amazing. And we should probably have a whole separate episode on working with your spouse. Because that sounds, I mean, honestly, I would never do it. I love my husband, but I would murder him because he would never murder me if we were together. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So that's impressive.
Thanks. It's been a journey, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I invited the two of you here because Gabi, you and I connected at a networking event recently. We were just talking about all the stuff that's going on right now in the zeitgeist of group practice and a lot of the struggles between owners and employees, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've had an owner-employee pair on already. I've had a couple of employees on to talk about things. And you two have a really unique, I think, relationship that you described to me when we chatted. And I wanted more people to hear about that. So I don't know who wants to start and tell me the journey of, I don't want to be like, oh, you guys are a woke practice, but I don't know how to explain it, right? You're doing the grappling.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We were talking about sort of the unique nature of our relationship and how it really developed. And it was so interesting. We were had to work backwards a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think when we are talking about what we're doing here, the way that I really see it is that I have always had a big passion for healing. And one of the ways that I want to do that is by supporting the community. And so it has become very clear to me in the last several years that doing this work is super important. I think I've always had an intention of having diversity and inclusion, equity, and relational safety in our practice, but sort of my confidence to actually do that has grown really gradually. So I was sort of reflecting on it and thinking about how my confidence was very minimal in the beginning. And then one of the first people that we hired happens to identify as a person of color. She is like this quiet, brilliant, wonderful person and therapist. And she's also very connected to her racial and religious background. And I think I had this moment of like, oh shit, I need to get my shit together so that I can support her and use the privilege that I've become so aware of to really uplift that person in particular. And then we started to sort of cultivate this more diverse group, and the process has evolved. And truthfully, I think it really started to evolve when Evelyn came on board. And so our relationship began there and has evolved.
Yeah. And to add to that, I know we were just talking about this yesterday because we were really just trying to figure out how it originated for us and what was it that just, I don't want to say like finally clicked, but it was kind of this moment where I knew that I could trust you with what I needed to say about my experience of being an Afro-Latina working here. Like I knew at that moment that I could actually share the things that I needed to share with her. I've worked with plenty of employers, and of course, as a woman of color, you do know how far you can go with them, right? And so Gabi just right away was very open to just any feedback I had for her or anything that I wanted to share. So I think that just kind of happened and began to evolve, I think, within months of me working here. So,
well, let's unpack that even more, because I think that if you would ask any white practice owner, they would say, yeah, I'm open to feedback. I'm a safe space, right? Yeah, I see you making your face, which is appropriate. So anybody can say that, right? And so it's not necessarily, I'm guessing, that Gabi said, yeah, I'm open, and you experienced her as open. Like, let's get more specific about what that is, because I know that white people have to cultivate that to be able to create the safety. So what is it for you?
what was it for me? Because I've always made comparisons like, oh, I remember this employer, or like being able to share only a certain amount of information with them. But sharing with Gabi, like there were moments where, I don't know, she would make it very evident that no matter what I said, that not so much that she wouldn't be hurt or offended. Like I wanted to bring my full self, right? Like a big part of it is just me, knowing that I have to be authentic, and whether or not I can share in that experience here, like that I had to determine on my own. And of course, it's through dialogue or talking with different staff. Like, can I share that? Clearly that's a no. Or can I share that? Oh yeah, I can share that. And it just felt like every time I attempted to share, she was like just holding the space, willing to receive whatever it was. And there were moments of like, hey, Gabi, that isn't okay for you to say, right?
Yeah.
I was able to tell her like, okay, as a white woman and me as a Black woman, you can't say certain things like that. And she would immediately just say like, oh my God, Evelyn, thank you. Like, thank you for telling me that.
Do you have examples?
Yes. And I think we've been able to have more examples because when I said something the first time, she was like, and please let me know if there's ever a point where there's something I'm messing up on. I think that's been one of the things that I've admired about Gabi, because she is open to that, right? You will, as you said, Sarah, you'll get the owners who'll tell you like, yeah, tell me more. Or I definitely want to be, able to like hear you out, but some just aren't. You were able to just kind of really just know that that's what it was. But I don't know if you want to share in the very first experience.
Sure. Well, what I remember about the first experience, and maybe I'm wrong about the order of this, but we were talking in a group staff meeting and I used the phrase low-hanging fruit.
Oh, I didn't know that. The origins of that. Okay, go on. Because I'm sure a lot of other people are like, What?
Yeah. And what I meant was something that's easily accessible. Right.
Right.
And so,
which is what we're taught it means.
right. Exactly. That's what that
Wow.
And Evelyn, I didn't notice at the time actually in the meeting, but Evelyn and I meet for supervision an hour right afterwards.
Yeah.
And you.
I was like, Gabi, I have something to tell you.
Mm-hmm. I knew right away.
And she was just like, oh my God, what happened? What happened?
Right.
And I said, like, that, I know that a lot of people do use that phrase, right? But there is so much history behind that. And so I, of course, shared it with her. And immediately she was just like, I am so sorry. But I think had I not felt like I could tell her that, I would not have, right? That would have been something I would have kept. I would have went home or tried to deal with it the way that I felt like I needed to. But I'm really trying to go back to what made me feel safe enough with you, because that's clearly what it was. I had to feel safe with you to be able to say, I need to tell you about my Black experiences, even if you don't always understand them, right? Because she's not going to, but she can at least say, hey, I'm sorry about that. Or she can say, please, like, teach me more so that I am aware and that I do know. So it's different when you have someone who'll do all the talking of what they want to do, but like Gabi, she does the walk, right? Like she does. So she wants to know about our experiences. I know, especially for me, and it's been refreshing to know that I'm always going to show up as myself, but that it's received from her as well. It's just a different experience as a Black person. So
I'm really touched by that. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is important to note too is that Evelyn and I seem to have a really unique relationship. Like there's something very special about the way that we connect. And it's funny because like the conversation that we're having here today is a conversation that we have had all the time. We're always processing. And I think both of us we come from such different backgrounds. There were some similarities in the way that we were raised, kind of, that led us to this work. And we have so much in common as adults. We are seekers, we are reflectors, we are open for learning, we are excited about lifelong learning and growth and healing. And I think both of us have this almost intuitive gift, kind of. And so we've just been able to connect in a really unique way that I hope is teachable on some level, but we've like cracked something open in both of us because of this connection.
Yeah.
And I think that is really unique, actually.
Well, I'd love your thoughts on this. I have some hypotheses on like what it takes. First of all, relationship. This is what I think is missing in the anti-racism dialogue right now. There is this just complete, like, we're just forgetting that everyone are people, right? And it's so interesting to me because 2020 was only 4 years ago, but it's a very different time than it is right now. We had the racial reckoning, and a lot of people woke up to, oh shit, I got to be anti-racist. And now what I feel like I see is we've got a lot of people speaking the language, but not necessarily doing the inner work. And so first is relationship, right? Remembering that the person across from you, like in this sort of situation, like actually gives a shit and wants to have a good relationship. The other thing I think that my curiosity around, because I've thought about this for myself, like I have I think a pretty similar relationship with Raelle, who ended up buying my business, Head Heart Therapy. And, I've asked her the same question, like, what did I do? How did I make you feel safe? And she can't name it herself either. But my thought is that white people need to grapple with their shame. They need to be able to recognize their shame. And I think also the person of color needs to feel that the white person can take care of themselves.
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of white people can't. They just haven't done the shame work or that work of like, I know where to go to get help instead of putting it back on you. Does that, you're saying, you're both shaking your head.
That's it.
I totally agree.
Yeah. because every time I would say something to her, she dealt with it, right? And I was able to know that she dealt with it. So, and I think so often when we are, and I say we, like people of color, when we're in environments like that, and we do sometimes share, the onus does come back on us, right? And it's not
Right.
for us to have to educate you or do all of these different things that need to be done in order for you to be able to work with me in an effective and relational way. But it is definitely relationship. Gabi and I are, as she shared, are able to connect in that way. And that has been a really great part of, I think, working here and working with her. But I think the things that you just shared, Sarah, are like dead on.
Are you a therapist stepping into a leadership role for the first time? Or maybe you've been in a leadership position for a while, but you're bumping up against new struggles. It's a transformative journey and one that can be deeply rewarding, but also filled with unique challenges. Many therapists find themselves in leadership positions because of their exceptional therapeutic skills. Yet leading, supervising, or managing others requires a whole new set of competencies not typically covered in graduate school. Our Authentic Leaders group is here to help you become the authentic and wholehearted leader you aspire to be. And we believe that the journey is best undertaken with the guidance of experienced mentors alongside fellow learners. The next cohort of Authentic Leaders will run November 2024 through June 2025, meeting once monthly on Fridays for 90 minutes. We'll also have some additional opportunities for connection and support along the way. Join me in this journey of self-discovery and leadership mastery, where you'll enhance your leadership skills and forge meaningful connections with fellow therapists committed to their own growth and the betterment of the therapy field. www.headheartbiztherapy.com/authentic-leaders-group. Well, and let's also talk, and I want to be very gentle in how I talk about this part, and I hope that you will dig into it more. But I think what you said is also important, that you needed to have the connection to yourself and the trust in yourself to speak up, regardless of whether she was going to take it perfectly or not. So I've worked with so many different people, and I've seen a wide variety of, I don't want to just boil it down to this, but like racial identity development for both white people and people of color. And I think that when we are on, I don't want to say like lower, but like earlier stages of development of our own racial identity, whether we be white or people of color, it is harder to know yourself and it's harder to trust the other. So could you speak to your own racial identity development, how you support others in developing their own racial identity development so that they can, because there's a quality of what we say in Al-Anon is standing for yourself without standing against others. And I don't want to go into this like angry Black woman trope, but sometimes where a person is in their identity development, it creates this like barrier to the relationship, right? So I'm saying too much, like, more than I do around this, but I see you nodding, so please take it away.
So it's interesting you bring up some of the things that you just shared. And the consultation work that I do, it's a lot of that, right? I work with women of color primarily, who some are young, tend to be young, and do not necessarily know that, one, that they have a right to actually say something about what they feel like is happening in the workplace.
Right.
Like they come to, and so what I do is that we have group consultations that we do. And so in the group consultations, I meet with the women of color and we talk about their experiences. We talk about what's happening, the microaggressions, the treated differently, the I was passed over, the self-care, just an array of topics. But it's interesting when, because I've always made it clear that in these consultations, it may feel like it's almost like a venting session, or they can come to kind of sharing what's happening. But I'm always going to work on, so now what do we do with it?
Yeah.
Right. Because it's not just about coming to this place just to vent and then that's it. And you walk away and you go back and you're experiencing the same dynamics, right?
Because that's not processing the
And it's
anger.
not, and it's not
Yeah. Yeah.
helping the person. And so we talk about what would that look like if you would say something? How
Mhm.
can you articulate yourself so that you feel heard? How can you remain professional?
Well, let's talk about professionalism too. I'll just put a pin in that. So keep saying
Okay.
what you're saying, but let's talk about that later. Yeah.
So I mean, it's all of that. It's teaching them you can stand up for yourself if this is what you want to call it. But in actuality, it's just you being an employee who is sharing in your experience,
Mhm.
right? If
Yeah.
I feel like something occurred and I don't feel like I was treated justly, I need to be able to respond to that. I need to be able to say
Mhm.
something, but I do need to be able to say it and articulate it in a way that is remaining professional, because that
Mhm.
part is important. But there are so many people who just again shy away from that whole thing, whether they feel like it's
Right.
conflict or whether they feel like they won't be heard, they shy away from it. And so it is work. It takes time. It takes learning about yourself. It takes learning who you are and how you want to show up in this world. Once you start to figure those pieces out and build on that and build on your, whether it's your self-esteem, self-confidence, whatever that is for you, you start to build on that. And then you start to learn, I actually can say something. Like I've had women of color that I've been working with actually start to say that. Like I send an email, or Evelyn, like I was so excited about that. Or, as I was saying these things, I was like hearing you in the back of my head, like, no, you got this, right? Because
Mhm.
that is what you want them to be able to do, feel empowered, feel like they can be authentic and be themselves and be able to show up the way that they need to. So
Yeah.
often we shy away from being who we are and we stay quiet. And it shouldn't be about that. It should be about being able to work together, because there's so much
Right.
richness in being able to learn about the other person, learn about their culture, learn about their differences. And I just feel like in doing that, it just, I don't know, it opens up for, as we always say, like community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to put a pin in professionalism because that's a trigger word, for a lot of people of color, right? Because professionalism has been used as a weapon.
mhm,
And I think we need standards for our profession. I'm not going to
yeah,
speak for any other profession, but I hold therapists to a really high standard because we literally hold people's lives in our hands.
mhm.
So, can you talk about for you, what is that? Like, what are the things about professionalism you want to throw away, and what are the things about professionalism that you believe are still true?
Hmm. I think I I look at professionalism probably no different than the way that I try to work with my clients in communicating. It's similar in a sense of you definitely want to be able to articulate how you feel. Like that's always going to be very important. But I also recognize like what the word professionalism can be for us, because it is this marker, right? That is probably a straight line that
Mm-hmm.
has been created by people that are not like us. And
Right.
so it is told like, you need to behave this way, and here's that line. And so for people of color, we may not have always fully understood what that was or felt like that was fair. But it's interesting because you will understand that in order to be able to get your point across, in order to be able to share how you feel about something, there is a way that it needs to come across. Of course, we need to still be heard, and I think that that's important. So I don't know that I necessarily know
Mm-hmm.
like what to throw away and what not to. Like I think it just kind of varies
Yeah.
per person, because if there's a way that you can go off professionally because it's needed, then there's a way to be able to do that too,
Mhm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
again, I just think that it varies.
I think also professionalism in our profession is a little bit different than in other fields. In order to do the work that we're doing, we have to show up in an embodied,
Mm,
authentic way. And so if we're not able to do that, or it doesn't feel safe to do that, we're not only going to, not feel safe in our own bodies, we're going to be pushing away the relationships with our colleagues. We're going to not be able to do great work with our clients.
Yeah.
And so there is such, I think the melding of authenticity, showing up authentically and professionally is what I think is so tricky. And that, I think, what I've heard from you is how you are working with these other therapists to help them figure out, how do I show up with my whole culture, with my whole body, with my whole self, and still feel like I can be here and hold presence and do good work.
Right. Well, and I think that the backlash of the negative aspects of professionalism sort of, there's always a boomerang, right? Like whenever we're trying to shift something, it goes too far, right? Like, I don't know, but like Gen Z's not capitalizing any words. I don't know. Like if someone sends me an email and there's no capital letters or punctuation, I'm going to struggle. But I do understand that language evolves, all that sort of thing, right? But yeah, I don't think that there is a clear way to define it. And so I love that, Evelyn, you are working with, up and coming therapists to sort it out. Because, I mean, it's funny, at Head Heart, I specifically tell people when they get their photos taken, wear your hair the way you want to wear it, like wear what you want to wear, be colorful, like be bright, be yourself. Cause I don't want anybody in their pictures wearing a fucking blazer. Like that is not the kind of practice we are. And I know that there are practices out there where you got to wear a blazer, and that's, so it's, I think professionalism can look different in different spaces based on what the owner of the practice is trying to create. And I, want to speak to owners and, invite them to really think about, like, what image are you trying to create? If you are a practice that's running around with everybody in blazers, that's going to appeal to a different clientele, than maybe a more diverse clientele. Like I've had people say, oh, you have a nose ring, so you will understand me. Like, does that mean that's true? Probably not, but it's conveying a certain energy, right? And I think for me, that's what I want to sort of sort out with this idea of professionalism.
Yeah.
And I think I always go back to our why. Like, why
are
we in this field? What is the purpose? What is our mission? And here, at least, our mission is to provide healing specifically for complex trauma, so that our clients can experience more authentic connection and peace in their lives, and so that they can also pass that on to their next generation. So in doing the work that we are doing in the field of anti-racism as best as we can, and we fuck it up all the time, which I think is the point, by the way. I think that is the point, that you have to be able to speak in first draft. You have to feel safe enough to get feedback. But yeah, just that it is really about learning about ourselves in doing this sort of DEIB work that we do, that we try to do on a regular basis, so that we can connect with ourselves, so that we can do really good work, and that the whole community is impacted by that. Hopefully, that's the hope.
I think so. I think there's an energetic ripple to it. Like, I know in 2020, we were saying reading books is not enough. And I agree with that. And we still need to be doing that inner work, learning language, right? Like shifting our understanding of things in order to show up differently, so that it, like you said, it ripples generationally.
Right.
Yeah.
And I do think there's value to reading. That's the beginning, at least.
Right.
Read the books, do the workbook, so that, as you said, so we have the language.
Right.
Or even conceptually understand that when someone gives you feedback, take it in, try.
Well, and I mean, again, I think it goes back to the shame work. And this is for, I think, both white people and people of color, right? Because shame, I was just talking with one of my friends yesterday about something that's going on between her and an employee. And what I reflected was like, shame just gets in the way of people looking at themselves. And I think that therapists goddamn better be looking at ourselves honestly. And that means confronting shame and wrestling with it. And that's really painful. And yet there's so much freedom on the other side.
Yeah.
Yeah. I experienced something so cool this past couple of months that I don't know if I should even share. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I'll share it just as an example of how impactful this work has been for me. So just a little background, I grew up dancing very competitively, and I had a great uncle who was the chairman of the board of the Alvin Ailey Dance Company.
And the poster right behind you. Yeah.
And so I grew up every year going to Alvin Ailey performances, sitting in the front row and going backstage and meeting the dancers and feeling totally starstruck, but not really recognizing the cultural significance of what was happening. I even remember there were moments when I would go with my mom and my mom would be like crying. I understood it in a certain context of her history and her background, but it wasn't really connected to what was going on there. And this year I went with my mother-in-law, who's also a dancer, and I experienced something I have never experienced before, which was the privilege, the honor of witnessing this incredibly rich, celebratory culture, which I had previously been taught to fear.
Right.
It was an unbelievable shift in what I was experiencing. And I really credit not only the work that we're doing at our practice with, social identity models and DEI, but really with the work that I do with Evelyn in our relationship. It was just so mind-blowing. I texted Evelyn at intermission. I'm crying. It was beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. Evelyn, do you have anything to share on that?
I was very happy for her, just that she was able to, it felt like she was able to experience it differently. When you know more or you have a deeper connection to someone else's roots or an understanding of their roots, it does allow you a sense of compassion. And so I think that was really, it was an awesome experience for her. I loved how I still have her text, but I just love what she wrote, and I was like, okay, I'm happy that happened for her.
Yeah.
Different.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's interesting too, because Gabi and I think the one thing I do love about our relationship is that we do talk a lot about our upbringing and even what led me to being here, because I worked in predominantly schools, or I was at Metropolitan for several years, but predominantly working with Black leadership, right? Or Black supervisors or executive directors. And being here at Solway was my very first time working as closely with a woman who was white. And it's interesting because of my background and where I come from, that I think was an initial challenge, just because you just never know what you're walking into, right? You don't know what that experience is going to be like until you're in it. And so it's been interesting because just along this journey, it's been both of us sharing, her sharing some things, and I'm like, damn, I can't believe some of these things happened for you growing up, or me doing the same thing. And so a lot of that being able to talk about, to open up about, has just been really good and rich, I feel like. So again, yes, going back to Sarah, that relationship piece, because you're not going to get staff that will just open up to their supervisors if they don't feel like they have a connection to them. And I think I've even shared that with Gabi when we first started doing our diversity groups, because I think we were like, oh, how do we just come in and share our story? We're not going to just share our stories. But there has to be this level of trust. There has to be this relationship first. It's different if I'm sharing with girlfriends who I've had for the past 10 years versus coming to work and now having to open up and talk. That's different, right? And so cultivating that type of community is just really, really what we've been trying to do.
Yeah. Well, and I can feel that. I felt the truth in what Gabi was sharing when it was just the two of us at the networking event. And I feel that between the two of you too. And I just hope for any practice owners who are listening or any employees who are listening to feel the depth of work that needs to be done in order to create this within ourselves. It has to start within ourselves.
Yeah.
That goes for both employees and practice owners, regardless of, social location and race and ethnicity and all of that, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that when I first started doing my own work, I remember obviously, summer of 2020, and I started reading, and I was experiencing so much white fragility and guilt and shame, and underneath all of that, I had already had so much training in like being humbled and taking in feedback and just like doing kind of the mental gymnastics of what it means to reflect on myself and my own therapy and in training. And I think that was so helpful in my own journey to just be able to say to myself, well, yeah, I'm a little bit racist, there are ideas that I hold about people that may or may not be accurate. And where did that come from? How did I get that? And to hold myself as a human being and this being part of the human condition rather than it feeling like a personality flaw.
Exactly.
It's not a personality flaw. It is a product of the environment and the society that we grew up in. And it really is just our responsibility to learn about that and know about that.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I want to respect your time and make sure we can end on time. But Evelyn, I'd love for you to share with listeners, if a practice owner is hearing this and is like, I need help, like, who are you looking to help and what is it that you're offering?
Good question. Thank you. It's funny how we just transitioned from that, like in terms of Gabi, you sharing the work that you had to do. And my hope would be that whoever is interested in working with me, because I would definitely love that opportunity, but to have someone who is truly willing to do the work, because it's not going to make a difference if you're saying, okay, just meet with my staff and that's it. Or is there anything I need to know, but not really implementing it or working on it yourself? Like, it's not going to stick. It's not going to help. And you're not going to get people who are going to want to stay. So if you really are like interested or invested in this whole process, like it has to be something that you're going to have to be open to feedback, because that is the other part. I don't just, do group consultations. I do individual consultations as well with the leaders. And I do give feedback like, hey, these are some things you may want to try. Would you like to talk a little bit more about what that can look like? Because I can help with that. And if they are, then great. Then that's where the work begins. Because again, it's not just about allowing the safe place for their staff, which I think is very great. It's definitely a step in the right direction, but it's not the only thing that needs to happen. This needs to be ongoing. It needs to be ongoing work with the leaders. This needs to be important to the leaders, right? Just like any other training or any other opportunities that are being offered to their staff, it needs to feel that way. Yeah, I would have to say that the person would definitely have to want to be able to do the work and be open to that. And then if so, I would definitely love to work with their practice.
Yeah.
Because it's truly a need. The more I see it is that there are more people of color entering predominantly white private practices, right? And so, I mean, the other thing too is that you want to be able to learn to finally start connecting with those staff in a much healthier way.
Yeah. And where can they find you?
Right now, I am on our Solway Psychology website, so they can reach out to me through there until I get like all of my other socials and things going. But yes, they can reach out to me on there.
It's solwaypsychology.com.
Like it's just Solway.
SOLWAY psychology.com.
Amazing. Well, thank you both so much for being here and sharing your hearts with us today. Like that's what I felt. That's what I'm walking away with. And it's
Thank
just a
you.
deep appreciation for what you're doing with each other and with others in your practice and outside of the practice. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. It was nice to meet you.
Thanks for listening to the special Burnt Out Practice Owner series. If you want more information about today's guest, go to our website at www.headheartbiztherapy.com/podcast. Thanks to the Creative Imposter Studios for editing, and I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. Until next time, bye-bye.